We all know how hard it is to get the motivation, the energy, the momentum to stay fit, stay physical, not live this sedentary life, depending on your work. Through my research and just common sense, eating healthy, working out, staying in motion is not just recommended for everyone, but for people with ADHD, it seems to be an essential key. And it's something that I've struggled with. I've had my own successes, but I've struggled with consistency in general, especially with exercise and eating healthy. So I wanted to dive in a little bit more into that aspect, see what we could learn, see what we could remind ourselves of, and hopefully build good habits. So I thought it'd be a good idea to revisit Dr. Tracy Marks. She has a video here explaining what exercise does to the brain. So without wasting too much time, let's get into it.
We all know that exercise is good for your body and your brain, but why? In fact, exercise decreases depression and anxiety. How? And what kind of exercise does that? That's what I'm talking about today. I'm Dr. Tracy Marks, a psychiatrist, and I make mental health education videos. You've probably heard the term runner's high, which describes a phenomenon where, after intense aerobic exercise like running, you can experience this euphoric feeling and sense of well-being.
I've never been a runner, but there was a time where I did turn to running as a form of exercise. I didn't really have the equipment, I guess, for weight training. So I turned to just running while I was intermittent fasting. I lost a lot of weight. And I definitely feel like I experienced that runner's high, even just for a moment.
For years, it was hypothesized that this was due to the release of endorphins, which is your body's natural opiate. Well, it turns out the runner's high really isn't that common among runners, but anyone can experience a relaxed feeling after moderately intense exercise, not from endorphins, but from endocannabinoids. Let me explain. You do get
Interesting.
endorphin release with exercise that serves the purpose of lessening pain perception during and after intense activity. But those endorphins don't affect your brain and therefore your mood because they don't make it across the blood-brain barrier. Your brain is very selective about what it allows to pass through the gate. Some molecules can pass and then others not. An example of this is with the antihistamine medications. Histamine is a chemical in your brain that makes you alert, and medications that block it make you sleepy. Histamine in your body from the neck down causes the allergic response of itching, hives, airway constriction. So below the neck, antihistamines block this allergic reaction.
This is interesting to know as well because my wife has real bad allergies. So it's good to know kind of those interactions.
Some antihistamines like Benadryl make you sleepy because it crosses the blood-brain barrier and affects the histamine receptors in your brain. Antihistamines that don't make you sleepy, like Zyrtec, were manufactured to be able to not make it to the brain. So back to exercise. We now believe that the good feeling you get after exercise is due to the release of endocannabinoids that do cross the blood-brain barrier. Endocannabinoids are substances that your body produces that activate cannabinoid receptors in your body. The two most studied endocannabinoids are AEA and 2.
It's not just a play on words, it is actually a high. That's interesting.
I'll spare you the full names, but the A stands for arachidonic acid. When something is made in the body, it's called an endogenous source. When the source is outside of your body, it's called exogenous. The two most studied exogenous cannabinoids are THC and CBD from the cannabis plant. Cannabis has over 100 cannabinoids that affect the cannabinoid receptors in your body, but THC and CBD are the two that we know the most about. So you can think of vigorous exercise as making your own strain of cannabis. Sort of. Your homemade cannabinoids have a mood lifting and anxiety reducing effect. But it gets better. Regular exercise has a longer effect on improving mood and anxiety because it triggers brain-derived neurotropic factor, which causes neurogenesis. Neurogenesis is the growth of new cells and the regeneration of damaged cells. Also, researchers have seen that people who exercise regularly have bigger hippocampuses because of this neurogenesis. In the brain world, you want to have a big hippocampus. A small hippocampus is considered a hallmark of depression. Your hippocampus is located in your temporal lobe and it's associated with memory and learning. It not only controls learning tasks like problem solving, but controls your ability to process emotion and allows you to level up your psychological insight. Researchers also believe with neurogenesis that there's a downstream effect of increasing dopamine and serotonin, both of which we know improves mood.
I know this video isn't specifically about ADHD, but it's funny how she does touch on some of those neurotransmitters and chemicals that kind of affect how we move in life, how we motivate ourselves. And it's not like a secret. We've always learned that consistent exercise just helps in general, anybody with their overall mood, their perspective, and just their overall health. But as we all know, consistency is kind of the hard part of building any habit, let alone having these deficits or these differences. And for myself, I remember I've always been overweight throughout my life. I've had ups and downs. The first time that I really was able to kind of motivate myself, I remember I was maybe like 21, 20 years old, 21, and I was really overweight. I mean, I had nights where I was having fast food in excess. And I remember it was like 3 a.m. I was downing a Big Mac and I was on YouTube and an ad came up for P90X, which at that time it had already been out for like 10 years. But there was just something about that moment that clicked for me. And within the hour, I was on eBay and I was ordering everything I needed to, the DVDs, the workout equipment, and I started as soon as I got it. And I went hard. I mean, I changed my diet. I was cooking everything. I was reading the materials. I was getting my friends and my family to start working out. And I had lost, at the end of everything, like 90 pounds. It was crazy. And I had built muscle and, at the time I still felt like I had a lot to go, but looking back, I was good, man. I felt good. I looked good, but I always felt like the fat kid, but I guess that's kind of normal. But thinking back, the motivation that kind of compounded when I started and the motivation that I was able to carry. And I've always looked back at that moment in my life of me being able to like really overcome something that's been a problem my whole life and how quickly and swiftly it happens. I didn't even realize. And I've never been able to get that same motivation. I've had other times where I've fasted and lost plenty of weight, but it wasn't as sustainable and I wasn't as motivated overall. I wasn't working out. I just wasn't eating. Another big moment I can kind of look on related to my diagnosis was my switch. I worked in food service. I worked on my feet for the majority of my life. And when I finally made a switch to an office job, I was much more sedentary. I was not moving around as much. And I quickly put on weight that I hadn't put on since I had lost that initial 90 pounds. And it was starting to affect me in several ways, but I'm sure it didn't help the struggles that I was having with my ADHD unknowingly. And I remember there was a time where I was trying to lose weight again, but I was trying to fast the way I did in the past, and it just wasn't as sustainable. I don't know what the difference was. I was under a lot of stress as well outside. Everything was just kind of mounting towards that burnout moment. And then just to kind of touch on those transmitters that are being created, those cannabinoids, I never knew that it was actually connected to those same transmitters. Like I self-medicate, and I have for a long time. And, I've said in the past, it's helped me feel grounded. But I have to say, in those moments where I was very motivated to work out and be healthy, I can compare it. I can see how your mood can be improved. Just, being consistent with it can have that prolonged benefit. So yeah, thanks again to Dr. Tracy Marks. She has some great videos. Please check her channel out. Also, check out our last video with Dr. Tracy Marks, about executive function and how that relates to ADHD. This was a shorter one, but I think it was very useful. And if you guys are interested in maybe following a fitness journey, maybe that's the motivation I need, but let me know. If you have any suggestions on videos about exercise, ADHD, anything along those lines, please let me know. I'm happy to check them out, kind of dig deeper into this subject. Like the video, it really helps get this out. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any videos. I'll see you guys next time. Peace.